guys, welcome back to another video, and today I am ranking all the Spider-Man movies, including Spider-Man No Way Home, since I've seen it twice. I am going to do a spoilers review at some point this week, so keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you hit the little bell icon to get notified when that comes up. But yeah, let's get into ranking the Spider-Man movies. So, we're going to go from bottom to top. So, sadly, number 9 is that. Now, this is the only one that I don't really like. The other ones I think are okay to good to great, or to amazing. So, number 9 is sadly the first Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I said this in my review. If you go back to when I was doing my Spider-Man reviews leading up to No Way Home, which is on this list, I mentioned that The Amazing Spider-Man is my least favourite. I love Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I love Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy, but I am not a big fan of the Lizard, because the Lizard, to me, is one of the worst Spider-Man villains, especially in that movie, and the way that they kind of, how do I put it? The way that they do it is just so not good. And also the other thing I say in my review was that they made a Batman script and put Spider-Man in that Batman script. Now look, I love Batman. He's one of my favorite DC characters. I literally have a picture of me and the Joker at Movie World here on the desk. The reason why I love Batman is because that he's dark. He lost his parents. He also just loves. He has ridiculous villains, and they all make them work. This one doesn't have a villain that works, and this one also. But also, the reason why I like Spider-Man is because that he's opposite to Batman. He's always joking and having fun, and he's more of a he does do nighttime fights, but he's more of a superhero that goes out in the day, which Batman's more of a night hero, as opposed to the Adam West version of Batman, where he's punching in the day. But that's why I don't really like The Amazing Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, to me, is one of those movies that's like, this is what they're doing for a Spider-Man movie. Okay. And the great power with great responsibility bit is so stupid. You could tell that they're just going like, well, how can we say it without copying it like we did in the Raimi movies? So it's like, that's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility. It's absolutely ridiculous. But, so that's my number 9. So my number 8, I'm sad to put this here because I watched all these films leading up to Spider-Man No Way Home. I'll say this. When I saw it in the movie theater, I liked it, but I didn't really love it. Of course, I'm talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I hate to say it, but it's my second least favourite of the Spider-Man movies, which I hate to say because I love Miles Morales as a character. I love the introduction of Spider-Gwen. I love the idea of them colliding into a movie. I think that's all great. I think going into it this time, I think I just had such high expectations going into it that I was like, this is actually not that great. And also, and another thing I said in my review was that it didn't build to anything. Like, yes, we're getting to Spider-Verse 2, next year. Soon, actually. Next year is just right around the corner. But they didn't build to anything. At least with the MCU, you start with Iron Man. Then you went to Hulk. Then you went to Iron Man 2. Then you went to Thor. Then you went to Captain America. And then you went to the Avengers. If you did like a Miles Morales movie, a Spider-Gwen movie, a Peter Parker movie, a Peter Parker movie, a Peter Porker movie, a Spider-Man Noir movie, and a Penny Parker movie, it would feel more impactful of going like, they are all colliding into this one world. And then they go back into their own realities, and then we pick up with Spider-Verse 2. So I think you just need solo movies first, before you collide them and go like, now we're doing this. But that's just the thing that I didn't really like about Into the Spider-Verse, which is odd because I do like that. I do like that movie. It's just not one of my favorites. Alright, the next one, it kind of upsets me because I really like this film, and that is, of course, Spider-Man Homecoming. I have a very soft spot in my heart for this one because it's the first solo Spider-Man movie I saw in the theater, because I saw all Tom Holland's Spider-Man journey in the theater. That was my first, I guess, character's journey that I've seen in a movie theater. I saw Civil War, that was my first Marvel movie I saw in the theater. Then I saw Homecoming, that was like my third Marvel movie in the theater. And then Infinity War was my, like, sixth? Yeah, I think sixth. And then Endgame was like my eighth. Yeah, eighth. And Far From Home was my ninth. And then No Way Home was my 10th. So I like Homecoming. It was a little, like, because I know how much the story of Tom Holland's Peter Parker has gone through. I'm like, there's such more grandness in these Spider-Man movies. I don't expect them all to be like, oh my god, something grand's happening. But when I think of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I think of Far From Home. And I'll talk about Far From Home later, but I think Homecoming I like, but I don't think it's as good as I remember it being. Same thing with Spider-Verse, but I think Spider-Verse was the more disappointing one, watching it this time, than watching Homecoming. Then my number 6 is Spider-Man 3. I don't think Spider-Man 3 is as bad of a Spider-Man film as much people says it is. Spider-Man 3 is a film that got fucked over by a studio. And that studio was like, you know what? What's the hot villain? Venom. So we're going to pull out Vulture because Vulture was meant to be in Spider-Man 3. It was meant to be Vulture, Sandman, and Harry Osborn's New Goblin. So they took rid of Vulture and then they put in Venom, and Sam Raimi didn't want that. So now they were like, so let's do it that way. Let's do Venom. There are things that work and things that don't. I don't think it's as disappointing as people think it is because I didn't see it at the time. And I didn't see Spider-Man 2002 when it was out in the picture theater because I wasn't born yet. I was born in March 2003. So later on in my life, I watched Spider-Man 2002. I'm like, wow, this is great. Then I jumped to Spider-Man 3. I'm like, oh, this is actually better than the first one. And then I watched Spider-Man 2 later on, and I'm like, oh, this is really good. I still love 1 and 3 more. But watching it this time, the dance is ridiculous. But I think that is what this Peter Parker would do, because this Peter Parker would have done the dancing and all that stuff. I think that's what he would have done. So I think Spider-Man 3 is not as bad as some people point out to be, because the fight scenes are great. Sometimes they look a little CGI green screeny, but the fight scenes are great. The Sandman story is great. Of course, the whole idea of having the black suit attached to Peter, making him more aggressive to Flint Marko and stuff, great. I actually like the Harry Osborn arc. Because there's a character arc for him, because at the beginning, he does the whole punching through the wall, and he doesn't like Peter at first. And then, later during that fight, he gets knocked in the head, and he's like, well, let's put him all to the side, because we need to focus on Sandman and Venom, and set those characters up. So they did that, and then at the end, it was so cool seeing Toby's Spider-Man getting punched to the ground by Sandman and honed down by Venom and choking him. And then you hear the Spider-Man music, dun 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 dun. And then, sure enough, you see something flying in, like, you could kind of tell that was Harry, but it was so quick that you couldn't really tell. But by the time they knocks him over and then you see the mask come up and lift up, and Toby's like, "You came." You're like, "Yes, that is one of the most hype moments ever. I can't believe that they did this." But there's a great character arc. I love Sandman in that movie. I love Harry Osborn in that movie. I don't hate Venom, but again, he's not the best villain that we've had in a Spider-Man movie. But my next one, of course, my number 5 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think it's leaps and bounds better than the first one. This one, there might be some things wrong with the story, but I think this movie, it takes what the gripes were with the first one, because the first one was more of a Batman film. This film is exactly what I think of Spider-Man. He is telling jokes, awesome swinging through the sea, some of the best swinging we got in a Spider-Man movie, which I agree. And we also have him taking down Electro, which I actually really like Electro in this movie. And we also have him dealing with the most ridiculous villain of all time, which is Rhino. He might be worse than Venom in Spider-Man 3, but again, I don't hate any of the movie villains. I think they are ridiculous and stupid, but I don't think they're as bad as people make them out to be. But what I will say though is that I really, even though I do prefer Electro, I really like Dana Hunt's Green Goblin. I think he did a great job at that. His Harry Osborn was kind of weird. I do prefer James Franco's version better. But I think the Green Goblin aspect of that character was great. He did turn into it a little too quickly, but he set up. He was dying. He needed Spider-Man's blood. He wasn't able to get it, so he had to go into secret projects, get the gas, and he was going all gross. So he went to the suit and started healing. They set up. So I think it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But yeah, and I think Andrew Garfield does a great job as Spider-Man in that one. I think Emma Stone does a brilliant job at Gwen Stacy in that one, and her death scene is still brutal, which I will talk about when we get around to No Way Home. But yeah, that movie, I'm like, this movie is the best out of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. But one of my gripes with it, and it's just a small gripe, is just that it felt the length. And I don't know what you would have chopped down. Because you couldn't chop down the Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone stuff because you need to set that up before she dies. And then you need to also have the Harry Osborn stuff in there to lead to the Goblin. You need to have the Max Dillon origin story and his motivations of like why he wants to kill Spider-Man. And like Paul Giamatti, I guess you could come out of the movie, but then you wouldn't have that ridiculous fight scene. I mean that great fight scene, not ridiculous. It is ridiculous with the Rhino, with Paul Giamatti going like, come on, Spidey, and that's ridiculous, but I think it's an amazing fight scene. I think that's one of the best Spider-Man opening scenes that we've got. But yeah, I love The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's why it is number 5 on my list. Number 4 is Spider-Man Far From Home. This is a step up from Spider-Man Homecoming. I'll get to No Way Home, but makes, like, even though that everyone hates the Iron Boy Jr. aspect, I think they had to do it to put it in the MCU. I don't get why people don't like it. I get, like, the whole thing of, like, people shouldn't be holding people like his hand, he should be his own hero. But in the MCU, it works. Because you already had 2 origin stories with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's versions. And you already had the whole him doing it on his own. And plus, he still had Aunt May there. He still had, like in Spider-Man 3, he had Harry Osborn in that final battle. He's, much like in Far From Home, he had Happy in, and like in, I don't know, like Homecoming, he didn't have Iron Man. Like, yeah, sure, Iron Man was there to keep him in check and go like, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you need to do, but he is not really doing anything. He doesn't really do anything in that movie. And but in this one, he deals with the death of Tony Stark after Endgame. That's the first Uncle Ben. That's Uncle Ben. That's his Uncle Ben in the MCU, which I don't know why people don't like understanding that. But that's his Uncle Ben in the MCU, and then you get through the whole thing of like, you get Mysterio as a bad guy, which I love Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal did a great job in that role. I think he was perfect. And you also get Nick Fury, like he's acting on weird, but he's a Skrull, so we can ignore it. We can ignore that. But everything in that movie makes sense, and especially when we at No Way Home, which we'll talk about later. Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home is one story. It's a long origin story, which I'll get to my opinions about No Way Home later, but I really love all of these movies, especially the Homecoming trilogy. I think it's really good. So next up is Spider-Man 2002, and I put this high because I have such a nostalgic like feeling when I watched this movie, because it's the first Spider-Man movie I saw. I remember watching this at my grandparents' house and falling in love with it, falling in love with Tobey as Spider-Man, falling in love with filmmaking in general, especially live-action filmmaking. When I was a kid, I always wanted to do animated stuff because of Toy Story, but then I realized that I couldn't draw, so I watched things like Scooby-Doo and Spider-Man and live-action movies, right? And Spider-Man 2002 is such a great origin story movie. Not just a Spider-Man movie, but as an origin movie. You have a lot of, unlike The Amazing Spider-Man, where it, like, takes almost an hour for him to, like, start learning about his powers. Like, you do have a while where it's like he gets bitten by the spider, and then you do, like, see Goblin and Spider-Man stories, like, comparing in scenes, like, doing the whole, you get a Peter Parker scene, then you get a Norman Osborn scene, then you get a Peter Parker scene with May, Ben, and Peter, and then you have the whole thing at school, and then you have the whole thing of him discovering his powers. That is what I'm talking about. It goes very fast, and it's not fast as in like, oh my god, it's gone so fast I can't follow it. It's fast in a way where it's like, I can follow it, it makes sense, that's a good job. So that's what I love about this movie. It does a great job with the origin, with having good action scenes, stripping them right out of the comic books, especially the end scene. I can't wish it was Gwen Stacy, but I can't understand why they did, because Mary Jane was very popular with the cartoons and with the comics at that point and stuff like that. Because most people wouldn't know who Gwen Stacy is until Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man came around. So I think that was great. My number 2 on this list is Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 was like, alright, what's great about Spider-Man 1? Let's amp it up to 11. So, it amps it up to 11, it does a great job. Alfred Molina is great as Dr. Octopus in that movie. I think one of the best Spider-Man villains in the movies is Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, because he does a great job at doing that sort of stuff. Even though I love Willem Dafoe and I love Thomas Hayden Church and Jamie Foxx and Michael Keaton and Jake Gyllenhaal, I think Alfred Molina is the one that I would put up there for my favourite Spider-Man villains in the movies, because I don't read a lot of the comics. I haven't seen a lot of the cartoons except for Spectacular Spider-Man, which I might do reviews of those episodes. But if I'm talking about movies, Dr. Octopus is definitely up there for my favourite ones. And Tobey steps it up. Kirsten Dunst steps it up. James Franco does a good job in this. Not as good as Tobey and Alfred and Kirsten, but I think he does a good job as well. Rosemary Harris, again, great job. Such heartwarming stuff with the whole speech of, I think there's a hero in all of us. Gives us strength, gives us power, even though that sometimes we have to hold on and give up things that we want the most, even our dreams. And then when that comes back around to the end, and Tobey explains to Alfred Molina and goes like, we had to give up our dreams sometimes. So I think that is great, and having that and the ending where it's like MJ's like, look, it's my choice to make. It's my choice to make who I fall in love with, and I think that is fantastic. I think that's a great I think that's a great Spider-Man movie. It's the best out of the trilogy. I do love Spider-Man 3, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's not the bottom. For me, it's the first Amazing Spider-Man is down at the bottom, and then Spider-Verse, and then Homecoming, and then Spider-Man 3. But then, like, the Amazing Spider-Man is the only worst one in these, and then Homecoming and Spider-Verse is like where it's like you get to the okay ones, and then Spider-Man 3 up to, I think, Far From Home, yeah, and I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is when you get to good, and then Far From Home up to number 1, which is, of course, Spider-Man No Way Home, which is amazing. So, okay, if you haven't seen my non-spoiler review, go check it out. It's on my YouTube channel. It will say Spider-Man No Way Home review. It doesn't say no spoilers, it doesn't say spoilers. It just says Spider-Man No Way Home review. I will do a spoiler one soon, but, oh my god. This movie was everything I wanted out of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. They were meant to have Tobey voice, I think, not Peter Parker, but Peter Parker, I think, in that movie, I think. Because that's the one that they parodied? I'm starting to lose words, guys, I'm sorry. But that's the one that they referenced, that's the way I put it, reference. But they decided, you know what, no, let's do our own one, then save Tobey until another one. I hope that we get them in across the Spider-Verse. I'm speaking Tom, Andrew, Tobey, Nicholas Hammond, Japanese Spider-Man is meant to make an appearance, but Takeo Spider-Man I want. Give it all to me. Give it all, like, it'll just be nostalgia. Just like this film was. You have Villains Return, you have Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, you have Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, you have Jamie Foxx as Electro, you have Rhys Ifans as Dr. Connors, aka the Lizard, which I don't really like in that movie, but anyway, it's cool to see him. But I will say this, without having them there, you wouldn't have had that amazing fight scene with Tobey and the Lizard, because they were meant to have them Spider-Man 4, which would have had the Lizard in it, I think. I think it was the Lizard. I think it was meant to have the Lizard transformation, but Vulture was meant to be the main villain, and Black Cat was in it. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but I think Dr. Connor's transformation into the Lizard was meant to be one of the few things that happened in that movie. I could be wrong. But it's what I wanted out of the Spider-Verse. You got Sandman. Yeah, that's all. Just 3 Raimi films and 2 Mark Webb films. I don't know why they didn't bring Dana Hahn back. Or, apparently Paul Giamatti was supposed to be a part of it, but they were like, no, we're going to cut him out. Which is very strange. Very strange. But yeah, I think No Way Home's my favourite. I think the villains, Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and everyone else does a great job in it. Of course, Tom Holland gives the best Spider-Man performance in the MCU. Marissa Tomei does great. Zendaya, again, great. Jacob Batalon, good. I like him, but not as much as everyone else. But I do like Ned. I think he was a very funny character from Homecoming to Infinity War to Far From Home to No Way Home. He didn't really do anything in Endgame except for that last bit with Peter where he hugs Peter. But I think all of that was great. And it's exactly what I wanted out of a Spider-Man movie. All that. If you guys want to go see my non-spoiler review, go check it out. I will do a spoiler review soon. I am going to do more Spider-Man videos. I have more coming soon. Like, I have Spider-Man suit, like my favorite Spider-Man suits. Like, most of these are ranking videos. I have best performances in Spider-Man No Way Home. I have, of course, Spider-Man villains. Best Spider-Man villains. I have best scenes in No Way Home. Spider-Man movies I want to see, and yeah, but I will do a spoiler review. Depending on how many people are there, I'm expecting to do 2 parts. But I'm fine with doing the one. But if we do 2 parts, I hope that we get lots of people, and lots of questions. So please go, click the, also, so just hit the like button down below, hit subscribe, also hit the little bell icon to get notified of future videos I make, especially if you want to join that No Way Home live stream. I will put a notification up on like things like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. I'll let you guys know of when I'm doing a like a spoiler review. I will let you guys know so you guys can do the set reminder or whatever you need to do, or premiere or whatever. But yeah, I can't wait. So guys, I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye.
Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon.